I always thought that my small-town police work would never involve me dealing with anything worse than the usual disturbances or petty crimes. But then I found her. I was on duty alone that day. The night was cold and gloomy, and I had almost fallen asleep at my desk when the phone rang. The woman on the other end of the line was too scared to speak clearly, but I could tell she had found something creepy in an old abandoned house on the outskirts of town. I went there immediately, without even waiting for reinforcements. The house stood in the middle of a dense forest, its shadow reflected in the moonlight. When I entered the dark corridor, the air was heavy and stifling, like a rotten cellar. On the second floor, in one of the rooms, I found her. A young woman was lying on the bed. Her eyes were open but empty. My heart stopped with horror when I saw that her hands and feet were tied to the bed. But what struck me the most was the terrible inscription on the wall made in blood. "This is only the beginning." My blood froze in my veins. Who could be capable of such a thing? And what did this inscription mean? I knew that this incident would change my life forever. And that was just the beginning. With trembling hands, I called for reinforcements. By the time they arrived, I tried to gather my thoughts. The woman on the bed was dead, and apparently she had been there for no more than a day. Her face was contorted with horror, and I couldn't tear my eyes away from the brutal marks left on her body. When the team arrived, we began inspecting the crime scene. There were no signs of a struggle, and the doors and windows were locked from the inside. It was hard to believe that someone could come here and do such a thing without leaving any trace. But what bothered me the most was the note found on the bedside table. On yellowed sheets of paper was written, "She was the first but not the last. If you want to stop me, find me." There was no signature, only a symbol, a black triangle with an eye inside. It was the beginning of a new era of horror for our city, and I felt that this maniac was playing a game with us where the stakes were deadly high. Later, as we examined the body, I noticed a small piece of paper in her hand. There was the address of another abandoned house, this time in another part of town. This invitation was clear. The maniac wanted us to follow him. He already knew we would find this note. He always seemed to be one step ahead, and I knew that we could not delay because he played with us like a cat and a mouse. We left for the next place. This time the house looked even more neglected and ominous. Although it was already late, the forest around the house was strangely quiet, as if the trees themselves were afraid to disturb the silence. We entered carefully, flashlights illuminating the old wooden floors that creaked under our steps. The feeling of tension was growing, and every rustle sounded suspicious. We split up to search the house faster. I went up to the second floor where I found another room with a bed, but this time without the victim. Instead, there was a new inscription on the wall, again in blood. "Time is running out." This only added to my feeling that we were participating in a crazy game. But where was the maniac? And where is his next victim? I quickly looked around the room but found nothing but another small note on the floor. It read, "Soon it will be too late. Next place is your old police station." This maniac knew about our past. He seemed to be watching us and anticipating our every move. My mind was frantically searching for answers as we hurried back to the car. The old police station has been closed for many years after new construction was completed in another part of the city. This place was infamous for its history. Several years ago, there was a series of accidents that led to its closure. When we arrived, the building looked even scarier than I remembered. The feeling of danger rolled in with every step, and we knew that every minute counted. The maniac was here somewhere, and we had to stop him before he made his next move. In the old police station, there was a strong smell of dampness and mustiness. All that was left of the once bustling place were empty corridors and broken furniture. We moved cautiously, listening for every sound, but all around was silence. We checked all the offices on the first floor, but found nothing. Going to the second floor, I remembered that there used to be evidence storage and archives. These places could hide something important. Everyone went separately, trying to cover a larger area. I approached the door that led to the old archive. The lock was broken, and the door opened with an eerie creak. The flashlight illuminated a messy pile of old papers and shelves. In one corner of the room, I saw something that looked like a fresh footprint from someone who had been here recently. I cautiously approached and saw another note taped to the wall. It read, "You are close, but are you fast enough? Time is not on your side." I could feel my heart start to beat faster. It was another provocation. Suddenly I heard a noise from below, and I quickly ran to the sound. Everyone gathered in one of the rooms on the first floor, where we discovered a TV that had unexpectedly turned on. On the screen, we saw the face of a masked man looking directly into the camera. "You want to play a game with me? You don't know who you're dealing with," he said. "Now you stand on the threshold of the truth. The next place will be decisive. If you want to stop me, find me in an abandoned house on Brookway Street. Just remember, time is running out." The image disappeared, leaving us in silence. It was a message straight from a maniac. He knew we were here and was taunting us. There was only one thing left for us: to go to the indicated place and try to stop him before it was too late. We wasted no time and immediately set out for the house on Brookway Street. It was a place that everyone in town knew about, but no one wanted to mention. The old derelict house stood apart from the other buildings, and its dark past made it known as a haunted house. But we knew that what awaited us there was more real and more dangerous than any ghost stories. The house was surrounded by tall grass, and it exuded an ominous calm. We moved forward, trying not to make any sounds. The front door was unlocked, and we got inside easily. It was dark inside, broken only by our flashlights. The house seemed abandoned for many years, with crumbling walls and broken windows. But, looking at every corner, we felt that someone was watching us. I headed to the kitchen, where I found another note taped to the refrigerator door. This time the inscription was short: "There is little time left. You must make a choice." I felt that we were approaching the climax of this terrible game. Suddenly we heard a scream from the upper floor. Our hearts sank, and we hurried to the sound. On the second floor, in one of the rooms, we found a new victim. It was a young woman, bound and frightened, but alive. Her eyes were wide with terror, and her lips fluttered with a plea for help. We untied her, and she began to cry, telling us that she had been taken by a masked man. He told her he would be back soon, and if we wanted to save her, we had to find him in the basement. We knew it was a trap, but we had no choice. The maniac seemed to always be one step ahead, but now we could catch him. Leaving the two officers with the victim, we went with the others to the basement. The door was locked, but we broke the lock and went down the stairs in the dark. When we turned on the flashlights, we saw that the basement had been set up as a makeshift torture chamber. The walls were covered with various tools and contraptions, and on the floor we found a new note. "Congratulations, you're almost there. Are you ready to face the true face of fear?" It was the climax of the horror, and we knew that now the game had reached a new level. But we also knew that the maniac was somewhere nearby. He must have been enjoying his game, and I couldn't help but observe our fear. We prepared to meet the unknown, ready to do anything to stop him. We took a closer look at the basement, but it was empty except for the gruesome tools and clues left by the maniac. The pulse quickened, and each of us understood that this place could become a trap. But if he really was watching us, we had to be ready for anything. In one of the corners of the basement, we found a small ventilation hatch that led to the next room. It was locked from the outside, but we were able to pick the lock and enter. The room was even more gloomy, filled with various sounds that seemed to be whimsical echoes of our own breathing. In the middle of the room stood an old wooden table, and on it, another note. "Are you still playing my game? If so, time is running out. The last step is to go down even deeper." Behind the table, we found a hatch that led to another basement level, almost catacomb-like. Its location was cleverly hidden, and we almost missed it. It was heavy and creaky, and opening it felt like we were disturbing something ancient and sinister. We descended the narrow stairs into even greater darkness. When we turned on the flashlights, we saw that this room was even worse. The walls were covered with graffiti depicting bizarre scenes of cruelty and torture. There were scattered objects on the floor, old photos, notes, and a few items of clothing. On the opposite side of the room, we saw a cell with a single chair in the middle. On it sat a man in a mask with a black triangular mask and one large eye. He sat calmly as if waiting for us. "Congratulations, you've made it to the finals," he said, rising from his chair. His voice was calm, even joyful. "I knew you'd come. You're looking for answers, aren't you? But are you ready to find out the truth?" We pointed our guns at him, demanding that he remove his mask and surrender, but he only smiled, raising his hands up. "You don't understand. This game isn't about me. It's about you. I only created the conditions in which you had to make a choice." He took off his mask, and the face of a middle-aged man with cold eyes appeared before us. "The choice you make will determine your destiny," he said, his voice full of ominous determination. "If you came here, you accepted the terms of the game, and now you will learn that it was in vain." Suddenly, he grabbed something from his pocket, but we managed to stop him. After a short struggle, we handcuffed him. But there was a feeling that this was not the end. His smile never faded, as if he knew something we didn't yet understand. We caught the maniac, but the feeling of anxiety did not go away. The man with the enigmatic smile continued to watch us even as we led him upstairs. His demeanor was disturbing. He seemed to enjoy it all. When we got to the surface and out into the fresh air, we finally felt a sense of relief. We thought it was all over, but one of the officers who was staying with the injured woman approached us with a worried expression on his face. "There's something wrong," he said. "She's gone." It was impossible. We left her under the guard of 2 officers, but now she is gone, and so are the officers. We quickly returned to the house, searching every corner, but found no trace. The maniac watched us with delight, mocking, "You'll never find her, no matter how hard you look." We realized that we were trapped. His detention was only part of his plan. The woman was part of this game, and now we had to choose between focusing on the maniac or looking for her. It was a difficult choice, but we knew her life was on the line. One of the officers offered to split up. Several of us were to stay with the maniac and deliver him to the site while the others continued the search. We hoped we would find some kind of clue, but there was no certainty. While we waited for reinforcements to arrive, the maniac sat quietly, only occasionally glancing at us with malevolence. He knew we were desperate. His plan was carefully thought out, and now we were at his mercy. When reinforcements arrived, we set out to find the woman. Time was running out, and every minute was important. We searched every corner of the old house, the basement, and the surrounding area, but found nothing. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. We cut back to the maniac, and he looked up mockingly. "You made your choice," he said. "She's already far away, and even if you find her, it won't change anything. The game has only just begun." His words were cold and terrible. We knew that the real horror was yet to come. Maniac didn't just play with us. He was amused by our despair, and we had to find a way to stop him before he did more damage. After an unsuccessful search for the woman, we decided to return to the station with the maniac. His sinister smile and threats hung over us like heavy clouds. While we were driving, he was silent, only occasionally glancing at us through the partition in the car. At the station, we placed him in a pre-trial detention cell. But even behind bars, he didn't seem worried. It was as if he knew something we didn't. We understood that this was not the end, but only the beginning of something bigger. While it was being decorated, I decided to look at the items found in the basement. Among them were old photographs, documents, and another note that we had not noticed before. On it was written, "The game is on. If you want to save it, you will come to the cemetery at midnight. But remember, every game has its own rules." This message caused a new rush of adrenaline. The cemetery was far from the city, a place where many unknown and abandoned graves were buried. The maniac wanted us to come there, but for what purpose? We knew it could be a trap, but we couldn't risk the woman's life. When night came, we prepared to go to the cemetery. The place was dark and quiet, and only the light of our flashlights pierced the darkness. We went all over the cemetery trying to find some kind of clue, but there was nothing. At almost midnight, we noticed something strange. One of the graves looked fresh, as if it had been recently dug up. We came closer and saw that there was another note lying on the ground. It read, "Congratulations, you've come to the right place, but you're late." We dug up the grave, but instead of a body or other trace, we found only an old box. Opening it, we saw an old clock inside and another note. "Time is playing against you. You still don't understand? I'm always one step ahead, but you can try to find me if you know where to look." It was another mockery. We were at a dead end, and the maniac continued to play with his clues, leaving us in the dark. He wanted us to continue the game, but we couldn't risk it and leave it to him. We knew we had to keep looking, but where? This question bothered us. We returned to the station, where the maniac continued to sit in the cell. His face still lit up with a mocking smile. He looked at us like pieces in a chess game, and we knew he wouldn't stop until he got his way. When we returned to the station, we were filled with a sense of despair. The maniac sat in his cell, but it did not bring any pleasure. His impenetrable smile was only annoying, and the looks he threw at us seemed to say that he had not yet said the last word. We decided to once again carefully check all the things found in the cemetery. The clock looked old and worn, but we felt it might be an important clue. One of the officers offered to take it apart to see if there was anything hidden inside, and this idea turned out to be correct. Inside the clock, we found a small roll of paper on which was written, "You are nearing the end, but will you have the strength to learn the truth? Look for me where it all began." These words confused us even more. Where it all began could mean many places, but what exactly did he mean? We discussed possible options: the old police station, the scene of the first murder, or even his own house if we could find it. We decided to start with the most obvious option, the old police department. It was already the place where we found the previous clue, and it could contain something else important. When we got there, the night was cold and windy. The old door creaked as before, and everything looked as if nothing had changed here since our last visit. We scattered around the building, searching every nook and cranny for any new clues. My intuition told me to check out the old chief's office where we hadn't been before. The door was slightly ajar, and it was dark inside. The light of the flashlight illuminated the old desk where the chief of police once sat. There was another note written in the same handwriting on the table. "That's it. The end is near. But are you ready to find out who I am? Look into your soul, and you will find the answers." This message was even more confusing. It seemed like the maniac was trying to make us think about something more than just his detention. He played on our fears, on our doubts, and we felt that every step we took only brought us closer to even greater unknowns. But one thing was clear: we were close to the solution, and now we could not back down. A note found in the police chief's old office led us to a dead end. "Look into your soul, and you will find the answers." These words seemed like a mystery that we could not solve. We were close to uncovering the truth, but we couldn't understand exactly what the maniac wanted to tell us. We decided to return to the station and have one last conversation with the maniac. His calm demeanor and confidence annoyed us even more. When we brought him to the interrogation room, he just sat there calmly, showing no fear. "Time's up," I said, trying to get him to talk. "What do you want from us? Who are you really?" He smiled as he leaned forward. "You've been looking for me for so long, but you never understood what you were looking for," he said. "You thought I was just a monster, a maniac who got pleasure from your fear. But the truth is, I'm just a mirror that shows you yourself." His words confused us. "What are you talking about?" asked one of the officers. "We know you killed people. That's a fact." The maniac sighed as if he was having trouble explaining what he wanted to say. "I do not deny my actions," he said, "but my every action was aimed at making you see the truth. You wanted to find evil so badly that you didn't notice how you became a part of the game yourself. You're looking for a monster, but that monster isn't me. It's your own desire, Judge. Punish. Take revenge." We were silent, trying to understand his words. He continued, "All these clues, notes, places were just tools to get you to look deeper. There is darkness in each of us, and I only brought it to the surface. But you were all so afraid to see it that you didn't understand that this was my real plan." His words caused us a wave of indignation, but also doubts. We knew he was a maniac, but now he presented us with a moral dilemma. Can we really judge him if he only showed us what we didn't want to see? Finally, he finished, "You can judge me and it won't change anything. I just leave you with the question, are you really ready to look in the mirror and see who you really are?" We detained him, but were left with the feeling that something important remained unresolved. That case was closed, but the question he left us with remained open. Each of us returned home with a heavy heart, knowing that this game was not over. She only made us think about who we are and what we are capable of in pursuit of justice. The maniac was stopped, but we knew that the fight against evil in the world and in ourselves never ends. Selves never ends. Selves never ends.